Hey guys, welcome to Careers Uncorked. This is your co-host Sid.
And this is your co-host Sharfuz.
At Careers Uncorked, we host some amazing guests and hear their incredible stories.
And we're super excited to have you join us today.
Hey guys, welcome to Careers Uncorked. This is your co-host Sid.
And this is your co-host Sharfuz, and we are back with another exciting session of Careers Uncorked. But firstly, Sid, happy Wednesday, man. How's your day so far?
My day has been pretty crazy. I ran out of coffee creamer this morning, so I've been having black coffee. It's been the worst. Like, as you can tell, I'm very sleep deprived, and coffee really helps me. But I think we need to address something here. Sharfuz was missing last week, and we heard a lot of rumors. And I'm glad you're back, but you can complete the story.
I'm glad I'm back too, Sid. Yeah, like the story of why I was not here. Dude, that's pretty interesting. So we were in Colorado trip, as we both were, and I had this ankle injury from this accident. It's a very controversial story of what really happened. You want me to go into it, or we could like skip that part?
We could skip that part, actually.
Okay, but I did have an ankle injury. Maybe we could talk about it later in the session. But it really hurt. I was in a wheelchair for some time.
Yep, we'll make sure to cover it in the rapid fire or something like that.
We will. But
anyways, coming back to Joe, I think we're really excited for this session because Sharfuz and I both personally know Joe really well. I met Joe in a weird setting when I was first employed at the Career Center. I met him while having mac and cheese outside of this food truck. And he was like, hey, Sid, what are you doing? Why are you here for the summer? And I was working over the summer. And he was like, wait, you should come work at the Career Center. So if you're looking for tips on securing a job, mac and cheese, and make sure you have someone like Joe next to you to offer your job.
Dude, you're telling me, dude, I've had mac and cheese every time in college, and I've been eating it at the wrong place, next to the wrong people. That's
matter.
Well, they got it wrong in college. All right. But yeah, we've been super excited about this session, and I know Joe's in the backstage. I have a lot of great memories with Joe. He really was a big impact in my college career as well. But why don't we bring him to the stage? Because I know a lot of our audience today is like excited to hear from him.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Good. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. As you can see, I'm deprived of sleep and coffee, so that's me for you.
Yeah, not too bad. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm really stoked to be here with you guys, and it's always good to catch up with you both. So thanks for having me on the show.
Most definitely. So to kick us off, let's start off with just some quick introductory questions. So Joe, why don't you just tell us about yourself, what you're doing right now at the university, and why you in this space of nurturing careers?
Sure. So I've been working in career education at universities and colleges for the past 20 years or so. And I've been at the University of Rochester. I kind of have two roles. One is running the Career Center for the undergraduates and some of the graduate students in the College of Arts, Science, Engineering. And the other role I have is coordinating efforts across the campus. So all the professional schools and the graduate programs at U of R, really helping students think about how to apply their degrees to life after university.
Right.
But also how to bring in other people into the community in the mix. So employers, alumni, parents, how do we involve all the stakeholders that exist in an ecosystem for a university and bring them all together to really support students in thinking about what they can do in their lives and their careers after they graduate.
Wow, that's a lot for us to take in. Let's
I'm the shortest version I could come up with.
Yeah, we didn't have enough space in the creative to feature title. We had to like shorten it.
I know. It's a really, I think higher education people love titles, and so they just keep adding them on. So I just been collecting them as I go forward. It's a good thing to collect, I guess, for my career.
It felt like we were like interviewing like Daenerys Targaryen, like Mother of Dragons.
This is the first time I've been compared to anything in Game of Thrones, so I appreciate that.
Okay. I got a good character, I hope, for you.
Not too bad, she went crazy at the end, but whatever. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched the 8th season, so.
Okay, yeah, I think there was a spoiler right there of whoever didn't watch it. But yeah, I said.
All right, so let's sort of jump into a quick sort of brief segment into your work at the university. So you mentioned a couple of things. Let's take it back to like, what is career education in the first place and why you're such a big ambassador for it?
Yeah, I think I think career education, simply put, is about really helping students in a university setting. Where I work obviously takes place in other places, but it's really helping students figure out how they can take what they learn in a university setting and all the things. So not only just in the classroom and your majors and your disciplines, but all the things that happen outside the classroom as well. And both of you are very familiar with your experiences at U of R. Everything you did outside the classroom was so valuable to your experiences and what you did afterwards. So it's taking all of those pieces and helping students make decisions around what to do with that information and what's possible for them. And not only in the first job out of college, I think that's kind of an older view of thinking about this work is like, what do I do right after college? And then you're set for the rest of your life. I think now with this generation, it's thinking more critically about how do you take this and adapt it to the ever-changing landscape that's happening in the workforce now? How do you pivot year after year? And I think your generation in particular is always sort of thinking maybe about things in maybe 2-year or 3-year kind of cycles versus previous generations, which maybe thought of things maybe in 10-year or 20-year cycles of jobs and careers. So I think it's an exciting space. I think I got into it partially just sort of by happenstance. I was a senior in college and I was doing an internship in an academic advising office. And then as I was graduating, I was like, this is kind of cool, like working in this kind of university kind of setting. So I found a job I was from New York, and I found a job in Midtown Manhattan doing career advising work. I was completely underqualified and unqualified for the job. But somehow I got the job, and it kind of sparked an interest in that sort of transition period of like, what do I do with all this information I have, and how do I make good decisions, right? It's at the end of the day, it's about like decision making. And so I think that kind of sparked it. And then I went to graduate school, and I kind of just stayed with this space because I found it really fascinating, because it was this really interesting intersection of people outside the institution and people within the university and these transient populations of students. And so everything was always sort of evolving and changing, but also kind of gave a window to like industry sector and what's happening outside. So it's just evolved and grown, and I've found a lot of opportunities there, but also just a really enjoyable career path for myself over the last 20 years.
Yeah, that's really cool, Joe. Like, I mean, that's such a long career, like, and it's just crazy how you've been passionate about this one thing for such a long time. And I was like, I was earlier looking at your LinkedIn, like, like just casually, and I noticed that like, like you've been through like 4 different universities or 3 different universities, right? So this whole time, like you were at Yale and all, like just working different segments, different universities. So is there a common pattern you have noticed in like career education? Like was the experience like similar to you for you as well as you were going between the different places?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I worked at public universities, private universities, small, like very intimate school campuses, and then like much larger institutions. So the last institution I worked at, VCU, had over 30,000 students, like 11 or 12 different schools, all these different degree programs. So it was a really fascinating place and very different than University of Rochester or University of Richmond or Yale. And so I think there are similarities. I think at the end of the day, there's college students trying to make decisions and better their lives. If you want to simplify this down to sort of the base level of it, right? They're making a choice to pursue education in the hopes that it leads to something better for their families and for themselves. And I know that's, was probably in the back of your minds when you were coming to U of R, and as well as your families, like this is going to help them have a better life in the future.
Right.
And then I think, but each institution kind of tackles it differently, right? Each institution has a different value proposition, essentially, that they're offering to students. And I'm not necessarily a firm believer that like college is the only way and going to university is the only way. I'm a first generation college student myself, and my family was working in the trades and construction growing up. And so that's what I did, and that's what I understood and knew. So I think but college, university has an opportunity to be transformative for students. I think what we're seeing now, though, with COVID, as well as with a lot of the movements around Black Lives Matter, is that it's not necessarily equitable, and it's not really doing a good job for all students. And it sometimes can be a really heavy lift and a challenge because there's a lot of barriers to access that. So I think there's common threads, but how it's instituted and how it's addressed I think really has varied widely, which has made I think moving around to different institutions really fascinating, just to learn how different schools do it, and how do you capitalize on those schools, like strengths to do it maybe a little bit more uniquely or better suited for those types of students. So like, I'm curious, like when you guys were thinking about university, what drew you to U of R and to come to Rochester? Like, what was it about it that you thought that would be, and what was like sort of the big push for you to go to university at all?
That's a really good question.
I'm asking you guys questions.
You're not used to it, Joe. I don't think you got the memo. That's not how. Okay, I'm just kidding. Yes, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I mean, this is definitely a flip on the interview, right? Like we usually interview the people, but this is the first time I've been put on the spot. So I have to come up with something really, really awesome. But so backstory, I actually went to State University of Albany, SUNY Albany, for a year before coming to University of Rochester. It was because I was a really poor student, but managed to make the most out of my first year in college, and then wanted to go to a better university. First of all, better ranked, and second of all, also something that would lead me to better opportunities after graduating. And U of R has a great alumni network, which included my brother at the time, who was the biggest ambassador for University of Rochester. He was like, Sid, where are you going? You have to go to U of R. So I was like, okay, that was one of my biggest decision makers for going to U of R, and college itself was for the job.
Yeah, I think, for me as well, I came straight as an international student from Bangladesh, and I think my mindset was set that I want to come to the United States for college. My dream school was actually NYU. I wanted to be in NYU, but the financial aid did not work out. And I think at the end of all the other acceptances I got, I think two things that really stood out for U of R was the financial aid. That was pretty good for me. As secondly was Meliora, to be honest. I really got into that buzzword. I really like the aspect of ever better. Like I wanted to be a better person. And I think I really like that. I thought this was a place where I could really be a better person. And like I like the vibes. It had good vibes.
It does have good vibes.
Yeah. So I think that was really good. That was a really charming thing for me, and I really like that. And I think that's why a lot of people choose U of R as well. And financially, it really helps us a lot of international students. But yeah, Joe, definitely thanks for asking. And I think one of the things you said that about like, we're all trying to be better through career education. Again, we're in the pursuit of Meliora. I don't know why I said that. But speaking of that, so as Career Center, you've been leading the Career Centers for so many years now. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that what your work has been in the Career Center, like some of the initiatives that you personally saw through at the Career Center so far?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, what I inherited at the university, I think it's very commonplace still at a lot of institutions, in that I don't know necessarily if students are really actively involved in the formation of the services and the programs and the offerings that an office like ours provides. And I think one of the first things that we wanted to do was, how do we engage and involve more students? So as Sid was telling his story earlier about getting a job in our office, I think that was a critical piece of it. We wanted students that kind of would join us and also bring ideas and really think about like what do you guys want, so that we can meet that need. And that may sound like a really simple thing, especially for those of you like are in product design and things like that and thinking about user experience. But it's not necessarily commonplace at a lot of universities in general, and I think in Career Center. So I think that was the first thing out the gate that I wanted to make sure I was on the street, listening to students, listening to faculty, listening to colleagues around campus. The office was a little bit insular in that it wasn't really, didn't really pull people into the process. Because to me, this work is a collaborative process. The students have to have an ownership in this, and they do. But other offices all contribute to preparing students for life after university. And so how do we pull them into that conversation? So I think the involving students and the voice being heard, I think was critical. I think related to that, a big initiative is that we wanted to involve more alumni. Like Sid mentioned, you had these people that wanted to give back. They love the university. And I think this is very common at a lot of institutions, that people have really good experiences, but there was no outlet for that in our office to kind of give back. and be involved in helping shape the next group of graduates, or offering opportunities, or just offering advice and insights. So over the last few years, we really built an infrastructure that we can, have more alumni involved in the work that we're doing. And we've seen a pretty significant increase of those people that are really kind of giving their time to help students and give back to the institution. So I think that was a really critical pivot for us as an office. And I think it's been really rewarding to have more companies, more alumni, more people involved to help out students. And we've built and adopted technology to allow us to scale that in different ways, which I think has been really, really helpful. I think one other thing is a few years ago, I came across the book called Design Your Life that was written by some faculty members at Stanford. It was they were responsible for teaching the most popular course at Stanford around designing one's life. And so we sent a bunch of teams of people from our office, as well as other members of campus, to go get trained out in California at their design studio in Stanford, and bring back some of those lessons and think more critically about how do we integrate this idea, but also change philosophically how we think about planning a career. It's not rote, linear kind of a preparation for like a math exam. Like, you have to think critically about all the parts. It's malleable. It kind of moves and ebbs and flows as you grow and learn things. And so how do we help students think about it a little bit differently? And so we've started teaching courses. We're teaching like 10 sections a year now on designing your life, and really helping students think through that. We're embedding it in different aspects of the work that we're doing. So I think that's a big shift philosophically as well. So we have infrastructure sort of changes. We've had operational changes. We've enlarged or involved and created a bigger ecosystem for people that are actively involved in it. And we've changed sort of the philosophical underpinnings as well, which has all resulted in more students being involved, more alumni being involved, more employers recruiting on campus with our students or virtually our students. And I think those are the outcomes that we want. And the first destination data that we've collected has been really great, and our students are doing amazing things because we have wonderful students. So it's really not about helping them like do better. It's really about helping them make better decisions at the end of the day.
That's where
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think all of the things that you described, I think it really led to some good outcomes, and especially the making better decisions at the end of the day, because the students make a lot of bad decisions throughout college. And I think ending up after going to that maturity and having all those resources and coming out at top at the end of the day outside college, like me, I ended up at least with a job that I enjoy, and doing this conversation. So that's where you want to be. Not exactly there, but
Well, I think Sharfuz, the reality is that there's so much information available to you guys now as you're in college, which is such a different experience than I had when I was in college, right? And so it's not about access to information or making good or bad decisions. It's just about making informed decisions, like anything else. If you're, this is going on Yelp, you use it to make better decisions about where to eat tonight or which place to get takeout from. And it's kind of the same thing is how do we help students navigate this immense information that's out there, and just make decisions that they understand better, and they also maybe relate better to the things that inspire them. I think that's not easy. That's a lot of you have a lot of pressures, and different students bring a lot of different pressure points to that, whether it's family pressure, values, pressure to make money or to choose different industries because of their experience or their exposure. So I feel it's a very individual kind of experience that I think we're trying to help sort of cultivate with students.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think just all the things you described, career centers, the different services, the resume reviews, then the advisor meetings, and then the career fairs. I have so many memories of you with the careers. At the career fairs, you'd always be there, and you just you'd be stood up, and it was just hey man, how's it going? Are you excited? Are you gonna talk to someone or something I don't know. I think they all worked out, and they're all. I think
you guys turned out just fine. And I remember you coming up to me, asking me a lot of questions, and I was like, "All right, Sharfuz, I gotta go talk to these other people." But you have a lot of questions you wanted to ask. So I said, "I know, good."
Just speak of which, every time I talk to Joe, he always says that, "Oh, I gotta talk to all these other people."
It wasn't personal, Sharfuz.
I'm not gonna think too much into it for now. Speaking of which, but Joe, we're talking a lot about careers and everything, and I know you do a lot of amazing podcasts, a lot of different sessions like this. But one thing we're really curious to know, me and Slade, and especially our audience, is like, who is Joe Testani as a person?
Is that the question? Just like an open-ended question?
Who is he as a person? I don't know. Like I said, how else do I frame it? Like,
yeah. So, yeah, that's essentially the question. And then we have some embarrassing photos of you from Facebook that we're going to pull up and ask you to describe the photos. And this is again a special segment, never happened before, just for you, Joe. We packaged all this.
I love it. You guys are lucky. I'm a good sport, so I think it's totally fine. Let's see. Who am I as a person? It's a good one. I am. I think first and foremost, so I have a 7-year-old son, and he is amazing, and he's a phenomenal little boy, and he's pictured right over my shoulder over here. But I love being his dad. I think that's really just something that I'm very fortunate to have in my life, and I have a really great circle of friends and family that I think really mean a lot to me, and kind of are the drivers for a lot of the things that I do right now in my life, and kind of trying to help me make better decisions as well. And then I think I just love what I do. I think it's, I love the work I do. I feel like I have a fortunate job to still be working, basically work and live on a college campus for the last 25 years. I think isn't too shabby of a gig to have in someone's life. So I love it. I think I get to interact with people that I enjoy working with. I get to meet new students all the time, which I think are really inspirational and really makes it interesting. And I get to also, have a really close knit group of friends all over the country, all over the world, really, that my career has allowed me to really develop. So I feel like really, truly fortunate and blessed to have had access to some of the opportunities, especially, like I said earlier, like when I went into college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like I was probably the poster child for career education, and I didn't know what it was. I was going to be an architect, an engineer, a sports therapist, a hotel restaurant manager, a social worker. Like those are just the ones I can remember right now. But like those are different things I was thinking about because I just didn't know. Right, I just kind of was going to where things that interested me were leading me. But I've been really fortunate and made some bad decisions in my life and some good decisions, and as long as you kind of keep learning and grinding and thinking about how to be better, but also lean into the change, which has been very thematic in my career, I think that's kind of all I could do. So I think that's me in a nutshell, I guess.
Wow. I have to say that me speaking to Shafuz for the past number of years, I think you have his dream career. He loves university campuses. He's trying to go back just to college because he likes campuses so much. So I think he's really done justice to the role there.
Sure, we can talk afterwards if you want to talk. I'll do like an informational interview and we can kind of chat about that.
Yeah, no, I definitely gotta do that. Man, you live in a college for the last 25 years. Come on, man, that's what I want to do. That's amazing. And I just love how you said, like, you were the poster child. Like, you didn't know what you wanted to do in college.
No.
And now you help people who doesn't know what they want to do after life with their career. So this is like a good, kind of.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. If you probably dig a little deeper, right, psychologically, I'm sure there's something like connected there. But I think it's such an interesting time in someone's life, whether you're a traditional college student like we were, or you're a non-traditional. I think it's even more interesting to think about sort of the decision to go into university to get. And now I think it's evolving, right? It's like any kind of learning or credential or anything else like that. It's really fascinating, kind of the work that goes into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool. But since you mentioned about digging deeper, we dig deeper into your Facebook. Some basic photos that we're looking for a short story behind. So we're just trying to make sense of these photos. So
let's do it.
I'm going to pull it up.
Yeah. So this is great. So this is a photo from a dive bar I used to go to. Is a country western theme bar in Richmond, Virginia. It's no longer there. They closed it down because there are some shady things going on in the back of the restaurant and the bar. But they used to do karaoke where people used to go do like a lot of country western songs, except me and a couple of my friends, where we would choose to do more modern rock or hip hop songs for karaoke. So it was pretty good. And this is so the whole place was decked out in country western. There were saddles and horse horse figurines and all this random stuff in there. So my little friend here was taking a sip of my drink at the bar. So yeah, it's called the Liberty Balance Cafe. Really a gem in Richmond, Virginia that no longer exists.
Wow. You were saying there's shady things going on at the back. I was like, it looks like there's shady things going on with that.
It's definitely an interesting place.
All right. Let's move on to number 2.
Oh, that is pure art.
This is your profile picture.
This is in Hawaii, I think. So for my mother's 60th birthday, my sisters and I surprised her for a trip to. She had always wanted to go to Hawaii her entire life. So we surprised her with a trip to Hawaii. So we took her there. I think this was on Kauai Island, and we took it right on the Pacific Ocean on this beach in this beautiful spot. I'm pretty sure that's where that is, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. I think you really captured Hawaii really well in this photo.
I think so. Like, you know how that show is like hanging there? Like, that's how I literally felt like before every exam I ever had in college.
I think it captures. It's meant to capture relaxation. I think that's what I was going for.
Gotcha. Great art.
Thank you. I tried.
We have another one.
Yeah, we have 2 more.
This is pretty amazing. So, this is so random. I'll choose to tell you the honest story behind this one. So, I have a number of my good friends, and my best friend lives down in Atlanta, Georgia, and so we entered into a chili cook-off competition for a number of years. And so this was our second year, I think, that we were in the cook-off. And the first year we didn't do very well. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't really make good chili, and we also didn't have a lot of like coordination. The second year, we really stepped up our game. And so we made an outstanding chili. We ranked in the top 10 of like 80 or 90 participants. And this was the award given to, it was called the Spirit Award. So it was given to the team with the most spirit, and we definitely represented that. So we won this gnome. There's a Spirit Award. And so this is still in my friend's house down in Atlanta, that sits on his shelf in his house. So his little girls can look at it. This Miss Cabbagetown Chili Cook-Off Award, Spirit Award winner. So it's definitely a prideful moment for me that we won that award. So it was good stuff.
Wow, this is a great award. I remember one award that Sharfuz and I received from you was at the Gwenny's back in Rochester.
That's right.
Yeah.
This probably ranks right ahead of that. So I think it's.
That is like the most special award we won so far for me and Sid. That's
well, you guys did a great job. You guys really represented, and I think you did really some great work. So it was well deserved.
Loki, that's the only award we got. That's very special.
Let's do one last one.
So this is my beautiful, precious puppy. Her name is Boca. She's going to be 10 years old in 3 weeks. So she's the sweetest little dog you ever did know, and my son is completely in love with her, and they're best of friends. So that's Boca. She's sweet. We got her at 6 weeks old when we first had her, and I trained her, and kind of did all the training for her and all the obedience and everything else like that. So she's super smart and really just a very sweet pup.
Yeah. She probably has a better resume than us.
She's got a couple. She went to a couple different schools. She almost passed her like obedience training like certificate to work in hospital. But, she kind of lost concentration at the end. That was my fault. It's owner's fault. It's all good though. Like she's still a good dog.
That's awesome. That's a really good dog.
I like this feature, Sid. This is a good one. I appreciate the walk down memory lane. This is good stuff.
No, this is I was really excited about this because like I feel like people really know people at a certain level, which is very professional.
Yeah.
So we like to break it down. We're going like for like the horse pictures,
Yeah, we saw that horse picture, and that's where it started. No, look, we have to dig deeper. That horse picture, we gotta go deeper on this.
No, those are the good ones. You found some good gems that represent different parts of my past. So I think that's all good ones for sure.
Yeah, no, me and Sid, we were very committed to the fact that we're going to make this a different session than all the other career-related sessions you do.
I appreciate that.
That's just the beginning. But let's get on the more said. I think this is one of the topics we're really excited to talk about with Joe. So do you want to take the lead on this?
Yeah, for sure. So Joe, right before we get into our next segment, I want to ask you a little more about higher education. So you've mentioned a lot about higher education in terms of like your work at the University of Rochester and stuff like that. But when we do come down to, let's say, higher education for students, what is like your go-to recommendation for students looking to pursue grad school?
Graduate school. I think this is such an important decision. I think it's important for a variety of reasons. Number one, financially, like you're taking on an additional load, even if it's a paid PhD program or a fully funded PhD program, you're still taking on time that you wouldn't be earning money, let's say, if you're not working a job. And so I think it's an important financial decision. I think it's an important decision from the standpoint of, does the subject matter really, really resonate with you and speak to you? Like, is there something that really you are curious and want to learn more about? And because I think that's time, especially PhD programs. You're committing 5 to 7 years of your life to go very deep and very narrow in a subject matter. So I think it's really thinking critically about that subject and that content, and that's something that you want to learn more about and are curious about and want to pursue. I think the third thing that really is an important factor, especially now, is what's on the other end of that. You know, what's the outcome that you're hoping to gain? Is it a job? Is it being better prepared for a job market or industry sector? Is it to create more opportunities for yourself in terms of your career pathing or job opportunities? And I think that's a really mixed bag and a very individual decision. It varies widely from a master's degree to a PhD or EDD or any other professional degree that you might pursue. So I'm always caution and advise students to really think critically about those decisions and really about the weight of that and their comfort level with that. And I think, once again, being informed about the decision, not placing any judgment or my subjectivity to what someone might do, but really giving them as much information as possible to really see if this is a worthwhile pursuit. Because I think it varies. It's so specific to industry and discipline and program as to what the actual outcome, and it continues to shift. And I think this is also something that I think it's evolving very fast in terms of the increase of different kinds of credentials, whether it's certificates or other kinds of micro credentials that people can gain now, whether it's online or in institutions. I think it's changing the whole dynamic of, before it was, 20 years ago, is an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, or either some sort of terminal degree like an MBA or a law degree or an MD, or some sort of PhD, EDD, whatever sort of doctorate. Now it's just like exploded. Like, you have certificates and micro programs and companion programs to master's degrees, and so that's really changed the dynamic and figuring out what's actually valued in the marketplace. What do you actually need to do your job? And I think it also relates back to, like, what are you actually good at? Like, what's your competency in doing something? And does that trump sometimes these credentials that you might pursue?
That's really helpful, because I agree with you with the amount of offerings that are available right now. It's pretty insane. So what are your thoughts on some of the roadblocks that students do come across when they're like, oh, well, should I go in for certification, or should I go for a master's, or study a little more, or work more, and then get into an MBA program?
I think that one of the pitfalls that I think students can fall into is just pursuing it because they don't know what else to do. I think that's I really worry about that, because if you just kind of do it because, like, I'm not sure what the job, I don't know how to look for a job, or I don't feel like looking for a job, so I'll just get more education. It doesn't always necessarily work out well if you're not coupling it with something else. And what I mean by that is, and you guys both experience this, you can't just take classes and never do an internship. You can't just take classes and never do research. You can't take classes and not be involved or start a company or be part of an organization. Like that doesn't work. It's about the education, your degree, and all this other stuff, which is very important and is actually a differentiator in many cases from, you know, Sid to Sharfuz. Like you might have similar academic backgrounds, but very different experiential, and that might be the difference for a company in making that investment. So I think the same thing applies to thinking about graduate school. What kind of experiences can you get, not just academically, but outside the classroom, that might be really complementary to what you're trying to learn? Do they set you up on consulting projects? Do they set you up with mentors? Do they give you an internship? Is that part of the program? Because I think that's really a critical piece of that equation. And I think working is always a great thing to do because it gives you exposure and understanding of how different industry sectors work. And you guys are both in very different industry sectors, and you're starting to see, if I get an MBA, is there really like a market for this anymore? Because if I work as a, you know, product development person or product manager for 5 years, that's equal to getting an MBA in some instances for some companies, whereas others, you need to do it because it's part of your progress in that industry sector. But if you're really still unsure as to what's possible and what you want to do, sometimes a master's or a PhD could be great to help you continue to figure that out and refine it. And sometimes it could be necessary to pivot. And other times it's like, I need to kind of put that off until I have a better understanding and invest my money or time into pursuing that. And that's going to vary widely. I'm talking very broadly and generically, but it's going to vary widely based on industry sector and degree type. So like an MBA program and a PhD in electrical engineering are two vastly different choices to make. Both have value, but it's very different, and that depends on the individual as to which one might be a better pursuit for them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because I think personally, I am like looking into perhaps an MBA, but there's like so many elements to consider, like financial wise, like, is it going to give me the career that I really want? It's also like being an international student, because I think with international student, like there are already a lot of the variables, but international student has like 2 added variables you gotta counter for, like more than 2. So definitely tough, Joe. There's like no simple answer, but I
think Sharfuz, you say it's really important. Also, what's the international market for those degrees too? And I think this is where for lack of a better term, the name recognition does make a difference, especially for international students. If you get an MBA at an institution that is not maybe well known globally, it might be hard to sell that when you go to another country, or that they don't understand what that is. But I think that does factor in, and this is where rankings, and I definitely am not a big fan of rankings. I think they do a disservice sometimes to these choices. But they do play a difference, I think, in other countries that I think very much rely on that for decision making. So those are serious factors, you know, for an increasingly global marketplace for jobs and talent that is getting smaller and smaller when we think about degrees. And if we really think about it, the number of people globally that actually have college degrees or even advanced degrees is so minuscule. I think it's a competitive space, right? Because it's not a big percentage of the global population.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Joe. Definitely, I think you definitely said it right. It's like the competition is so high, and there's like so much resources that students are needing now than more than ever, right? And we're grateful that we have all these resources. And I think this is like a good way to sort of step into one of the things we're excited to discuss today is that career education in general. Right. So all these institutional universities have all these resources. Like, how do you feel about it in general, career education? Like, from your experience so far. And it's
kind of like where it's at right now, or like
where is that right now, and what kind of a contribution do you think they're making for students overall?
If I take a step back and look at like the landscape across American, higher education, it's very inconsistent with institutions that invest in this space specifically about career education, even as a concept, right? It varies so widely. And I think there are many institutions that have not invested or even thought about the reason their students are coming to their institutions, right? And you guys talked about your own experience. You were thinking about what do you do after you graduate, what your job prospects are, what your graduate school prospects are. And so a lot of universities still have not invested in thinking more critically or being transparent about the value that they're helping to contribute or build with their student population and meeting them where they're at. And I think that's a really unfortunate state of affairs. And I think you see it, let's say from I worked in a public university, you see it from the state funding of universities. And Sid mentioned Albany, like New York State is one of the higher states to fund higher education. We have a very strong public education, but even New York has defunded higher education at a pretty significant clip. And I worked in, like, let's say Indiana, and it's the public universities there they get minimal funding, from the state of Indiana to run their public institutions. So there's been decisions, in the government and to make choices about how to fund this, what I think is still an important and critical piece of this society and, globally, but just in the States, we need an educated population. And I mean that from a K through 12 population. Like, we have to invest funding in bettering our schools and our teaching and investing more in that space. And that then extends to higher education. What's our responsibility to help create a better workforce? What's our responsibility to help an educated citizenry? And we're seeing that play out right now with some of the issues that are facing this country about the importance of being knowledge and making good decisions, taking information, researching ideas before sort of drawing conclusions on things. I think those are derived from the education structure and system. So I feel like that then plays out in the career education space, and you see such a wide variety, and I think it's not prioritized and is so disproportionate with who chooses to invest. And the University of Rochester has chosen to invest it. When I was applying for the job, one of the main questions I asked them, whether or not I was going to take it or not, was around, are you guys really committed to this? Do you really think this is important for your students? And what does that commitment look like? And I think that was an important question for me, because I didn't want to go somewhere where they said it was important, but then they invested no money, they invested no staff, they invested no attention or prioritization. And I think all of those things, they obviously answered those questions and said they were committed to it. And I've held them to that, that stated goal. And they've held me to be accountable to produce something with the investment that they've made in me as an individual, but also my team, and it as a priority. So but I sometimes, some days I think that you are a minority in their investment in the space when it comes to like the landscape of higher education. And that's gonna be challenging. And I think in these kinds of settings we're in right now with the economy the way it is, it happened in 2008, 2009. There was a big influx of support for career education because students demanded it, families demanded it. We're investing all this money. We want something to show for this. I think we're going to see that again with this round, because it's how you open the news every day and it's about the cost of education in a virtual environment. Is it worth it anymore? And you're starting to see this sort of shifting of the grouping of institutions that are out there, these elite, very, very elite institutions, and being worth the cost, and then this middle group, and then this group that's on the fringe of either closing down or questioning is it even worth to pursue these areas, and is there a lower cost option to provide the education? I think this is where I think there's a crossroads coming, or we're in it right now over the next few years with higher education, and it happens every cyclically. But I think this is going to be another one that happened 12 years ago, and it'll happen right now as well. Does that answer your question, Sharfuz? I think it's a big question. I think there's a lot of elements to it when thinking about like where the state of affairs are right now for the space.
No, I think, Joe, that was very like that was thank you for like, that was a really thorough response, and I think that answered a lot of questions. I think that was like we gotta go back to this segment on the recording and decipher this, because there was a lot of good stuff that you said there. And side note, that question you asked for your job interview, like, are you guys really committed to this? I think that was like a good question. Like, do you have any other questions you want to ask? And are you guys really committed to this? So,
I like to think that if I'm working in this field, I better be a really good interviewer, since I try to train and help students be good interviewers. So I have a very high bar for interviewing for myself as well as the people I interview for my office. So.
Wow.
That's a good question. Yeah. So if you're a student listening on this and the next Google interview you get, ask them, are you really committed to this?
Well, I think it's actually happening more with your generation of looking at companies who purpose aligns with what people want to do, right? And I think that question and that's why you see a lot of this sustainability and this transparency. And I think the workforces, you saw what happened at Facebook. People walked out and said, we don't believe that this is aligned with what we think this company should be. I think you're going to see more of that in the future, and people are going to move to companies that are better aligned or better supported of creating a better society, creating better worlds, that are sustainable, that are thinking more broadly than just profit margins. I think that's a trend that's going to continue, which I think is a good thing, frankly.
Absolutely. No, for sure. Yeah.
And Joe, you covered this briefly. You mentioned that the education system is going to change. Going online is going to be definitely a difficult transition for a lot. What are your thoughts in terms of the future? You think it's going to be more self-paced learning? You think it's going to be more certifications offered by employers? What do you think is the future for universities?
I think this is so fascinating, Sid, because 10 years ago-ish or so, you saw like the first online kind of really mass online stuff coming on board, right? Like Coursera and edX launching, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, it's going to totally transform higher ed," and it didn't. It created some friction, but not really shifting what's happening. I think we're going to see another incremental move in that direction. And I think there's a number of factors influencing that. I think it's what's happening with COVID, and I think there's a real impact on showcasing the gap in many institutions' ability to offer quality online education, not remote learning, but really online education in a really deep sense. And I think that you can do it in a high quality that's really beneficial for the learners. But I think it's going to show the light on like, how do you do that more effectively? How do we invest more to do that better? I think the companies are continuing to evaluate, can we do this in-house? And you saw Google a few weeks ago kind of rolled out their whole certification. You need a high school diploma, and you can start thinking about going through Google certification, and they'll hire you into certain engineering roles within that. I think we're going to see more of that, especially from big companies like Google, to offer that, because they're invested in their own workforce. That's the lifeblood. It's their biggest investment. They need talent to advance what their mission and purpose is. I think we're going to see an influx of that. I think you're going to see probably a growth in more of these credential offerings, competency-based options. And it's always existed for a long time in very specific industry sectors. So we talked about project management, PMP option that's been around for a while. You can pursue that. It's a certification. It's tested. People understand what that is. And CFA, same thing. Really tried and true tested. It's definitely a replacement, or it doesn't. People look at that sometimes more so than the MBA as an important marker of knowledge. So I think you're going to see more of that in specialized pockets, and that will continue to proliferate for things that are very specialized. But there's still a need for change, adaptable kinds of talent that can pivot on the fly. And I think that is something that higher education can do really well. In a place like Rochester, I feel like we train you to be thinkers and critical thinkers, to adapt to situations. We don't give you all the answers. You have to figure it out. You have to research and find conclusions. So there's a space for that too. And I think they all actually can coexist in the same ecosystem, but which institutions will kind of step into which areas. And the ones that have, I think, a variety and a mix, and also offer more continual options for their alumni, I think will be the ones that survive into the future in a really significant way. So if we start to pivot and offer more ways for you guys to come back to U of R and build different skills and competencies and certifications, you probably would, because you had a good experience here, and you would not go back here because you trust the educational experience that you had here. If you could do that virtually, I think that it could be. So I think we're upon this really significant sort of disruption of areas, and I think the government is also going to play a significant role here in the States. And you see it in other countries already in terms of them being more linear and thoughtful about what the workplace needs and helping to influence the degree programs that are offered to fill needs that exist in the workforce, because that's evolving at a pretty rapid rate as well. We have to help reskill people to be ready for new jobs that are coming. And I'm not a big of like the robots will take our jobs person. I think it creates new opportunities, but we have to be ready to help reskill people whose jobs are being replaced by some functions of automation. But that means they can do other things, and I think they have the capacity to do that. But do we have the infrastructure to help them arrive there? Those are going to be the big questions. But unfortunately, this is not a space that has encountered a lot of good coordination between workforce development, employers and companies and industry, higher education, and the workers themselves or future workers.
Yeah.
It happens in pockets or in very specific locales or regions, but we don't have, like most things, a very national thought process around this and how do we solve for it. It's left to the states and the regional municipalities to handle that. So that's going to be really interesting to see how it continues. But I feel like there's space for the diversity for sure.
Well, so that was, again, a lot for us to take in, but I think that was a great response.
Yeah.
I do strongly agree with you on quite a few things you said about like reskilling and upskilling, because the change of the whole job market is going to require people to get trained again. So that's really interesting that you mentioned people would go back to universities in that capacity to learn and also transfer their skills.
Yeah.
And I think this helps. It's really important for communities that are at high risk or high poverty. This is where I think we've failed a lot of cities, and Rochester falls in that category. We have a lot of people that want to work, that are willing to work, that want to just learn something different, to apply to different, and we haven't created enough, I think, support and infrastructure to help take people, give them higher paying jobs that allow them to lift themselves out of poverty, or provide programs that are more linked to job opportunities as opposed to just sort of implying potential. I think we have to create more of those, and we can help a variety of levels of our sort of society, not just the white collar jobs that for a college educated, but how do we help reskill people that have been displaced because industry sectors have dried up or they've moved out of country or out of state in some ways. And I think we have a responsibility to that for sure.
Yeah, and I think I'm also like gonna quickly add there is Joe, I think a lot of the experiences, like maybe you can learn some of the course materials online, something that you learn, and maybe to some degree. But I think I really like what you said, like, like higher education prepares you in a particular way that other programs, other certifications would not. I think college really teaches you the resilience and I think the self-discovery is a big part of college.
Yeah.
Like the behavioral question interviews, like all of those are like parts of your college experience, like being in student organizations, like knowing new people, discovering your strengths and your weaknesses. So yeah, I totally think as well, like higher education is much needed. But then you have companies like Tesla. Oh, this does not require a college degree. You can like a lot of other companies like that. That's where like a lot of the force is moving. So it's interesting to hear you on this.
Yeah.
No, I think there's definitely something like that. Higher education for the win. I think that's where things are. I like my college degree. I worked hard for it.
You did. You both did, for sure.
I don't know what said.
Let's not get into that. But
I don't know if you want to have that debate.
I have something better planned. So I know, Joe, you're almost. I'm almost done with my bottle of water. 53 minutes in, it's dark in Sharfuz's place. It looks like it's night. Yeah. But we're at the most exciting part of our session. It's the rapid fire.
Okay.
So we're gonna ask you some questions and really short, brief answers, one word or maybe a few words if possible.
Yeah.
So I'll get us started. Superhero power, if any.
Super strength.
Like the Hulk?
Not like that. I mean, like more like Superman versus the Hulk. I don't want to have to like transform into something that scares people. So yeah.
That is something. So Joe could like set up a lot of those college carrier booths. Like all the companies can give strength. Always bigger booths for all the companies in the career fairs.
It goes back to my construction days. I'd like to be able to like maybe do a better job of lifting things up and stuff like that.
Oh man, that'd be fun. All right, next one, Jay. We know you travel a lot, but so favorite travel destination so far?
This is a good question. Top 3 cities outside of the United States would be Tokyo, Amsterdam, and Florence, Italy.
Ooh.
Oh, that's interesting. Pretty cool.
Yeah, they're all on my wish list.
Yeah, they definitely are the top 3 like outside of the States.
Wow.
Places you should not travel right now.
Places I should not travel, or places we should not travel.
You want to travel right now?
I do miss traveling. I really do. Like that's one thing that has been really tough on, like even traveling stateside. I miss it so much because I've gotten so used to like being somewhere else like every 2 months or so, just going somewhere new.
Yeah, for sure.
Good
Joe,
luck.
what's your favorite college campus?
Oh, that I've ever been on?
Yeah, that you ever visited.
I'm biased. I went to Indiana University for my graduate degree, and I still think it's one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. And so I would probably say top of my list for sure. And I've been on so many college campuses, it's not even funny. So I'm very much what I would deem a higher education nerd. And like when I go somewhere, I'm like, oh, let's go check out the university. So I definitely have, but Indiana like is just beautiful, gorgeous, but there's probably a lot of emotional connection there for me as well. So
for sure.
Yeah. I can picture you traveling with your son and he wants to do all the fun things and you're like, no, let's go to that university. Let's check out that college.
That is 100% what's going to happen. So I can't wait for college tours. It's going to be great.
That's awesome. Okay. So best job seeking or student focused platform that you like? Or all the platforms you've worked with so far?
I'm gonna go Handshake. I think I've been with them from the start of their from a startup with 50 schools to over 1,000 universities that they work with now. So I've gotten to know them really well and work really closely with them. So I would definitely put them top of my list.
Yeah, Joe, you've always been a big fan of Handshake for a while.
Yeah, I think I like company. I think you said short answer, so I won't go into that. That's for another Uncorked series.
I low-key think you're an investor, but
stop asking me a follow-up question.
Okay. I figure up.
All right. How many cups of coffee do you think students at the UFR consume per day?
Oh, this is hard for me. I don't drink coffee, so this is always a hard. Like anytime the coffee comes up as a conversation, I would say probably on average a day. I would say 4.
4. All right, we'll fact check you on that. You'll receive an email from us.
How many cups of coffee do you guys drink a day?
Oh, way too many.
Yeah.
That's the right answer.
I drink for 10 students and you offer who does not drink. So, I have a drinking problem. I drink too much coffee. Basically.
No. All right, cool.
All right. I hope my mom did not watch that. But yeah, okay. So going back to your okay, so what other career would you do if not this? Simply. Anything else? Nothing to do with higher education, man. Not anything else.
Do I need to have a skill in it?
Sure.
No.
Oh,
No, that's
architect.
Ooh.
Architect?
Hands down.
Dude, he's gonna build universities. Joe, you're gonna probably design more universities and colleges.
No, I probably would do something much more interesting.
Joe, what do you like the most about UFR?
What do I what?
What do you like the most about University of Rochester?
The students.
Thank you.
All right. What's your hidden talent?
Hidden talent. Oh shoot. Sharpfoot. I love cooking, and I think I'm pretty good at it.
Okay. Can I ask follow up, like favorite dish you like cooking? I'm just curious.
Any pasta with any sauces. I'm Italian, so like we like making different sauces and pasta, and I've been experimenting a lot since I've been working from home with breads and pastas and various dishes. I don't like following instructions, which is a kind of a referendum on my entire life. Like I don't like following sort of structured rules, so I like freestyling.
That's pretty cool, man. Yeah, we'll come over for some pasta sometime.
Absolutely. Welcome when you come back to Rochester for sure.
I said.
That's funny. But if you're trapped in a karaoke bar and you have to sing a song in order to get out, what song would you sing?
Probably Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice or Paid in Full by Eric B. and Rakim. Which I could do without the carry. I could do that second one without the carry, without the words. So
Sid, Dream Day with Joe. Have him make pasta, then go to a karaoke bar for the whole.
That's good. That's good for me.
Yeah.
All right, Joe. Next one. Why do you smile so much? Like you're always smiling. Why are you always happy? You're always smiling. What's the secret? I'm just curious. That was my question. Like, I've never seen you not smiling. Like
so
how?
my cousin, like my little cousins had asked me this one time, and I was like, listen, there's just so much material out there that I find entertaining. So it's just always something I think to smile about and laugh about. And so I think it's good stuff. And I don't know. I think I choose to be like, see the funny things in life. And if you don't laugh at it, then you're sunk in my mind. So.
All right. That's a good one. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm gonna go ahead for the last question. Joe, who's your favorite co-host, Sid or Shafuz?
You have a pause for this, Joe.
Well, listen, I'm gonna have to go with my former employee just because and Sid, just for the record, the first time we met was on the road trip.
It was, yeah.
In California. I think that we met there before you. Obviously,
the summer. Yeah, we did, of course. Yeah.
At my office. So I'm gonna go with Sid. I've known you a little bit longer. You introduced me to Shafuz. So that was probably that. So I owe you the thanks for introducing me to Shafuz and bringing Shafuz into my life. So I think I'll say Sid because of that.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it. Joe was just thanking me to introduce you, Shafuz, to him, but I behind the camera.
Alice answered you. I'm not sad anymore that I didn't get the vote, but that was a good result.
Shafuz, I know what I'm doing. I've been around the block a few times. So.
It was awesome. Yeah, no, Joe, thanks for being such a great sport as always. And I know we're way beyond the time, but I think, but yeah, Joe, I think that was really cool. And I think this is the other part of it that we really sort of wanted to dive deep into, but it will also be more respectful of the time as well. But let's talk about the future of the workforce and also accounting like COVID happening and some of the other things that are going on that is a signal that how the future might look like, right? What do you think is the future of the job market? And I know we talked about the automation stuff as well, but what do you think students should be aware of about where the job market is heading? If we want to start with that.
Yeah, that's all right. I think if I'm giving advice to students to think about how to position themselves best for what's to come, I think it's getting comfortable with the idea that nothing is certain and there's too many things that will be shifting. And so the best thing you can do, there's an old visual from that IBM created a number of years ago about a T-shaped individual, right? And it's about having a depth of knowledge in an area. So think about it as like what your major might be, like having some depth of knowledge and doing something really, really well, but then having a broad scope of competencies that are more industry agnostic, right? If you think about being a really good writer, like it doesn't really matter what industry, like you need to be a good writer no matter what. You have to be effective at conveying ideas. You have to be really strong in conveying stories for a client, for your team, for whatever it might be. So I think there's certain things that I think students can really work on that are more broad-based in terms of competencies that are relevant to a lot of industries, but making sure that there's something that has a little bit of depth in terms of their ability to do really well. And both of you guys have your majors and disciplines. You understood a discipline, and this only continues as you go into your career. What can you do really, really well that's marketable and strong that you can speak to? But also, can you do this broader range of competencies that are applicable to a lot of industry sectors? And we're seeing more of a confluence of that. I think before there used to be these very rigid lines, like if you're an accountant, you're an accountant. If you're a consultant, you're a consultant. But I think we're starting to see a blend that people can shift or jump from industry sector to industry sector or profession to profession because of these common competencies that are relevant to different industry, or at least a family of industries. So I think that's really, really important for students to understand that conceptually and think about their collection of experiences and skills in a different way. And I think University of Rochester, as a specific plug, is expressly built for this concept with how the curriculum is built and how the freedom students have. I think it's gonna be critical because some of this stuff, we don't know what's gonna look like in 10 years in terms of what job will be primary, and that's gonna depend largely on advances in technology, sort of the shifts in geography, the government regulations. Today was all the hearings in DC with the big four tech giants that could have significant effect on monopolies and changes and competition, but also globally. Where are the jobs going to be in 10 years? Is it the United States? Is it China? Is it other parts of Southeast Asia? Is it Africa? Like, there's so many different things that might shift that then shifts the labor market in a really significant way. Or do our immigration policies continue to get more restrictive? And does that change the dynamic of our workforce in different ways? Or will it go back to a broader that still are the destination for workers from around the world? So I think there's some really fascinating things. But that adaptability of understanding like how to apply something and what you do and sort of shifting it, I think it's gonna be critical. I think that is the future of our workforce, to think about how to shift that. I think the other thing I'll say briefly is that students will have multiple careers in multiple industries over their lifetime, which is a very different sort of construct of their lives and careers than I think it was 20 years ago. So you're going to have maybe clusters of time where you worked in 5 years in a certain sector, then you shift to another sector, you start a company, you work gig work, you go back to a company, and that I think that movement is going to be very different, I think, in the future than it's ever been, and that's only going to continue to grow. I don't know if that really answers. I'm hesitant to say specific things because I think there's so much variability that exists out there.
No, there's Joe. That's definitely a lot of variabilities, and you're right. There's so many things that's uncertain, and I know you touched a lot about immigration stuff in itself, and the geographies and the job would be moving. And I think, Joe, one thing, as an international student myself, who is as I'm going to be I have 2 years of my STEM OPT left, and so many students graduating this year, and just COVID, job being less. So what about all the kids who are coming here for the American dream, coming to UFR for it? And what about what's your thoughts for the international students and some things they should definitely have in their mindset? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a tough time. I'm not going to pretend like it's difficult. I'm not going to be Pollyanna and say it's all going to work out. It's great. I honestly think there's a lot of it will be determined in November in the United States. And which direction we go as a country. If we continue to move in a direction that is a little bit more insular and closing of the borders in both literal and sort of figuratively to an international workforce, or if we reverse that and think more critically about what this global talent does for this country and how it shapes innovation, how it shapes progress, how it helps all parts of our society. I think that's going to be a pivotal moment to see which direction it goes. And we've seen it over the last 4 years, how that's shifted dramatically from what it was prior in the previous administration to this one, and how alarming and that shift has been to impact a population that's contributed a lot to the innovation and the growth of many organizations in the United States. So I think that's going to be a big factor in that. I think it's important. I think that international students right now cast a really diverse and wide net of opportunities, both in the United States, but also globally, looking at graduate programs, looking at work, because I think this is it's even more volatile for international students, and I think it's important to be diversified in their thinking about the different options they could pursue and what the value of those different options are, whether it's returning to home country, going to a different country, pursuing further education in the United States, or education in another country. I think those are all going to be things that I think should be on the table, and evaluating what might be the best option for an individual.
Yeah, No, absolutely. I think definitely. I think those are some really golden advice. And Sid, you've been hearing a lot of students talking to you about the international students about their concerns, right? I think. Oh, I think Sid is having some technical difficulties there. Wait, okay, I'll let Sid come back on this. I think he's having some audio issues as he texted. But Joe, yeah, I think it's good that Sid's not here. I don't think he had much of the conversation anyway. I think. But yeah, so Joe, one thing I was just curious, like, is the career center approach going to be different now coming into the fall? Like, are you guys preparing something differently for this fall semester as students are coming back, strategy wise?
We're fully virtual. So I think we basically are trying to create as engaging of a virtual experience that we can provide to students. We have a full slate of alumni that are going to be involved, offering a variety of opportunities virtually. So our podcast, we have people coming back to speak virtually in smaller groups and with student organizations. We're having all our employer engagements going to be virtual in terms of recruiting and hiring and interviewing. Our advising is fully online. We're piloting some stuff this summer with using things like Slack and things like that to be more responsive and kind of answer students' questions as they're coming up. And also looking at investing time in other virtual kind of opportunities like virtual internships or virtual skill building opportunities for students to pursue. So we've been piloting a bunch of stuff this summer just to kind of see if it sticks. And then we're looking to partner with some more technology firms. And this was kind of on our roadmap anyway. This has kind of accelerated some of it and make us think a little more critically about how we offer it. And I think it's a variety of like self-directed, peer-to-peer, like having students help other students through our office. And then also sort of more of the traditional one-on-one and programmatic offerings. I think it's making sure students kind of engage in the way they think is best for them and whatever time of day, whatever it might be. But I think the thing that we've been working on in our team is how to make sure that if students show up with advisors or with our team, that it's more than just a presentation of just kind of showing information. I think they're gonna get that all day everywhere else, and I think it's important for us to have interactive opportunities and having some conversations like we're having right now with groups of students to really kind of bring it to life a little bit more, because I think students will be craving that. I think we crave that, and so I think that's going to be a shift. But I feel really good about our positioning in the office and that we've thought about it, we've planned it, we've kind of are preparing for it, and we probably are preparing also to pivot if we have to something else if something else presents itself as a barrier.
Great. So I'm sorry, I lost connection there for a second. I heard Shafuz roast me, so I have to roast him back. It's a thing we have going on. Shafuz, it looks really dark at your place. I don't know whether you have the lights turned on.
I really don't. I think the sun gave up on me. I think I kind of faced it towards the window today to have more light, but there's not enough light out there.
We're both on the East Coast. It's pretty sunny here in Rochester. What's happening for you?
Joe, Rochester has its own climate. We all know that. Rochester is a whole different segment over there, man.
It's true. It's a beautiful day here.
I'm really glad. But yeah. Sid,
Joe, you mentioned some really good stuff in that last part that I heard about the Career Center taking initiatives to go virtual. I think that's something that really brings me on to a question about the workforce itself. Do you think the virtual workforce is going to expand opportunities for people to work from, let's say, their home country and just have an internship in the US or work from a different location all completely virtually?
I think it's going to vary by industry sector and what can be done virtually and what can't be. I think the biggest challenge in the United States when it comes to advances in technology or this virtual environment is, and like gig work and kind of project-based work, is honestly our laws. Everything that's written in the laws around labor laws is built off of a construct that is from the early mid 1900s. And so taxes, employment law, insurance, healthcare, everything's built off of this very traditional construct. True. So I think if what's happening now starts to push some of those constructs to shift a little bit, I think we might see more diversity in some of this happening. And companies like Google can sort of orient themselves and structure those things. And they're in California, which I think is also more favorable to some of these ideas, whereas other states are very restrictive with what that looks like. But I do think there'll be a shift and an exploration of how to do that more effectively. I think where this can really, really be impactful and helpful is helping companies to diversify their workforces, because they're not relegated to, let's just keep it in the United States, they're not relegated to look at their locale that they're in and maybe be strapped to find diverse workforce in their area. This might be an opportunity to bring in talent from other places that bring diversity to the organization, but also different ways of thinking about solving problems that might be facing an organization. So I think it'll be very varied. I think there's good opportunity for it. The question is, are the companies really equipped to think critically about that? I think you'll see a number of them that will be, and I think people gravitate towards that, which will then have a competition effect on the other ones. It's like try to play catch up, because it's a war for talent, in most cases.
No,
that's very true. And I think definitely in the tech industry, that's huge, because Google just pushed their work from home thing all the way till summer of next year. So we'll soon see a trend of other companies just following by, being like, okay, Twitter's announced forever, right?
Yeah. And I think the key thing here is, especially for the for-profit sector, it doesn't impact and it increases, revenue and profit. There's really no reason to argue against it, right? I think if we can, and we see people that are happy and still engaged in their work.
True.
Then you start to look at more ways to do that. So if it doesn't hurt the bottom line and people still feel engaged and invested, I think there's a value. I do think people are missing interaction, but I also think that if cities start to return to normal and you're working in a different city, you might get the interaction socially, and then work-wise just be doing your work. So I think we're just in a very extreme situation right now where you can't do either of those things in many places.
Exactly. One other thing I think I was really curious about is you've been working in the space where you've essentially helped a lot of people get jobs. Where do you see that in the future? Do you think it's going to change the whole application process, how you apply for a job, the interview process? Do you think there's going to be changes to that overall process as well?
I think so. I think it's, sorry, Shafuz.
I was just saying, is ATS even going to be a thing in the future?
The problem with some of the AI machine learning stuff that's out there right now is that I don't think it's still not proven not to be biased, because it's created by people that have inherent bias. So I think that has to catch up to these issues of bias that are inherent or implicit in some of these processes. I think we've already been moving in that direction significantly. Last year, all the banks in Wall Street, they suspended all in-person sort of interviewing as a first stage, and moved everything to a virtual environment and a automated environment. So I think we've been going in that direction for a number of years. I think the technology has to catch up. It has to be better than it is. So I think it will continue to shift how we source talent, how we identify talent, but there still has to be a human component to that, because I think much of the work that's being done still involves a lot of interaction with each other and people working together. So the technical pieces, I think, can be automated for sure. Like, do you have a certain requisite skill set? But I think as we find newer ways to find talent that maybe college degrees aren't required, and maybe you can find that in certain ways, or how do you source talent from a wider pool, like these coding camps that have been like really proliferating over the last few years, people graduating from these coding camps, and the problem has been, how do employers find that talent? But now that they're creating more ways to do that, I think we're going to see a continued sort of shift in those processes, especially if you can work remotely. I think it creates a different dynamic once again of like, you're not relegated to like people moving to a certain geographic location for that. But that there's pros and cons, there's downsides to that as well, is because I think California, Silicon Valley has been successful as it has been because you have this ecosystem of all these people that jump from company to company. And like Boston's the same thing for the biotech sector. You have all these people that are sort of congregated, and it sparks innovation. It sparks more of the sort of happenstance interactions. What happens to that if we start to sort of change that dynamic of that. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it shifts. But the technology is getting better and better, and I think we're going to continue to see this try to help companies sift through the talent pools to find the better fit for them, for the skills, but also culturally, as well as diversity, to really improve their workforces.
Gotcha. I think that's really interesting. But Joe, I think we're 1 minute, 1 hour, 20 minutes. I can't even say it anymore. 1 hour, 20 minutes into this session. It's probably my longest Wednesday so far. But we have another surprise from Shafuz. He's going to ask you a question. You're going to be a persona, and we're going to essentially interview you right now. It's going to be quick, 2 questions. I promise you'll have enough time to make pasta for dinner.
Okay.
But Shafuz, you want to go over the identity of this interviewee?
Okay, yeah. So what did we come up with so far, Sid? Okay, yeah. So Joe, the persona is that your name is not Joe Testani. Your name is, surprise, Joe Smith. You're from Arkansas, right?
Arkansas, yeah.
You grew up on a farm and you love horses for some reason. You love horses. Your persona is you're a recent UofR graduate. You're a comp sci and a philosophy major. Your extracurricular, most of your UofR, you worked at the Career Center. You were a peer career advisor. Unfortunately, you're so dedicated to the Career Center job, you didn't have enough time to study. Your GPA is sort of below average. Like, I don't know, like, what's his GPA, Sid?
So 2.8.
It's a 2.8. Okay. You're president of the Salsa Club, and you're applying for this Apple software engineering position as a recent graduate. All right. So this is sort of the persona, and you could try to add. If you want to add things to it, I will give you the freedom to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you could add more things to it if you want to add any other cool extra guy or something like that.
Sure.
So Sid, we have 2 questions for you. So do you want to go with the first one?
Yeah, before we do get started, welcome to Apple, Joe. Do you have any questions for us before we get started?
No, I'm just really excited to be here, and I think this is such a great opportunity for me, and I feel fortunate to be able to spend some time with you guys. So thank you so much for this. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, so are we. So Joe, let's start off by hearing a little about you. Why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, growing up in rural Arkansas, I think I never really imagined myself sitting here at Apple, 4 years later. I think it's been a really great journey. I think I've learned a ton over my time at the University of Rochester. I really felt fortunate to be able to be involved in a variety of things, both through my majors of, comp sci and philosophy, but also through all the things I've done outside of class. I feel like I've really grown as a person and really learned what it means to be in diverse settings and also think more critically about solving problems, which I think University of Rochester is just expressly kind of positioned to help students do. So I've enjoyed my 4 years. I'm looking forward to the next stage of my career and really jumping into something where I can help a company really kind of advance what they're trying to do and solve problems for them.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. That was that's pretty cool. It seems like you definitely had a lot of complex challenges thrown at your way, and you definitely persevered. And University of Rochester, that seems. See, we heard about that school, right? We did. It seems like a good school. Yeah. But welcome to Apple, Joe, and we're excited to be having this conversation. So, our next question for you is, Joe, like among all these things that you've been through, so how do you handle rejection? And tell us about a time that you had to go through something like that.
Well, my second year at U of R, I wanted to get an internship, and I applied for about 130 internships, and I got rejected from all of them. I think it was really tough for me. I think I'd always been really successful. I was a valedictorian in my high school. I was a cross-country athlete in high school, and I was one of the top runners in my state. And so I think this is something that was really difficult. But I realized that I was really kind of conveying the wrong things to the organizations. I think my class year and the skills that I had at the time weren't really conducive. And I think I might have not been applying to the right things in some cases, nor did I realize that how important relationships were. So the following year, I kind of approached it very differently, thought more critically about the network of alumni that we have, some of the upper class students that had gone on to get great internships. I started asking more questions and listening. And so I think I learned a ton from that, and mostly how to approach that process very differently, because it's really competitive. And so that's how I got here. I networked with a number of alumni, learned a little bit more about the Apple opportunity, and then thought better about how to present myself to really position. And I obviously, had some challenges, academically. I haven't done as well as I think I have. I had some really big hiccups my first year in adjusting to U of R, but I think I've learned from that as well, and I think I understand the skills. I know what to be done in my second 2 years at U of R. We're really strong academically, but I also had some great internships that allowed me to really excel as well.
That's very, very interesting, Joe. Thank you for that response.
No problem.
Follow-up question I have is, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I think obviously we think a lot about this, and my friends and I talk a lot about this at U of R, but I think it's really, I want to be an organization where I feel like I can contribute, that I can solve some things. I'm also interested in continuing to learn. So an environment that allows me to continue to learn, but so much is changing rapidly in the sector in terms of computer science. So it could go in a variety of directions. I think it's going to be largely dependent upon the team I land on and what I can contribute to them, what I can gain. But I want an opportunity to kind of continue to evolve and pivot and adapt to the opportunities in front of me. So definitely in computer science in some capacity. And I think I'm looking forward to what it presents itself. But am I working on something that I really feel strongly about? I think this is why the Apple team, in terms of the iWatch healthcare, is really something that resonates really well with me, because a lot of growing up in a place that's really rural and has really poor healthcare and the population there, I think we can make a big difference. And if that's something I can marry both my interest and skills along with some of my areas that really inspire me, I think that's going to be the key thing for me within the next 5 years.
That's a wrap on the interview. I think that was very impressive. Shafuz, do you want to hire Joe?
I don't do the GP anymore, man. I don't think.
We don't care about the GP anymore. That was actually very impressive. I love how you swung in the Apple Watch. That was a masterpiece. And then,
I'm pretty much undefeated on interviews since 2002. So I'm pretty, whatever I interview for, I've gotten. So this is my wheelhouse. So I'm good to go.
Wow, that's really, really good, Joe. I don't know how you're doing this, but it's really good.
Really, I mean, we sort of we didn't think too much. It was like a last minute segment. We wanted to just chill for it. It would be fun, but that was really cool, man. That was really fun.
I told you I can roll with it. You know what I'm saying? It's my wheelhouse.
I wasn't kidding.
That's some really solid response, Joe. Thank you. We're really pushing that, the sportsmanship there. We're just. It's been really fun, Joe.
All right, let's bring it together. So last segment, Joe, before we let you go, is recommendations. What recommendations do you have for people who are currently in a pretty severe situation where they've lost their job or their internships have been canceled? What can they do to make the most of their time right now?
Students are still at university and still studying?
Still at university, yep. Or we're just graduating and we're about to start a job.
I think this may sound really simple, but I think it's important not to panic. I think it's important to take a step back, take a deep breath, kind of assess the landscape, and start to think about how to prepare a plan for some of these various contingencies. It's going to vary depending on what you want to pursue and what's happened to that marketplace. So, for example, if you want to go into healthcare, there's a lot of opportunities in healthcare. It might be a different aspect of healthcare than you might have originally thought. But it's not like it's a shrinking industry by any means, especially right now. So I think you have to kind of take a landscape, assess what that looks like, and start to craft a plan with people in our office, with people in your career centers, people that are really in your network, that are really more tight-knit within your community. I think the second thing you can do is think really critically about how you start to expand your network and your community. Who are the people that are advocates for you? Who are the people that have your back? Who are the people that you can trust to get advice from? And if you don't have a lot of those people, it's important to think about how do you expand it. This is a critical time in competitive markets, in recessions. The relationships you have are going to be really paramount in getting access to opportunities, but also really kind of navigating a landscape that can be very challenging because of the competition that might exist for internships or for jobs. So I think it's important to take stock of the network and the community you have and invest in that. It's something that should be kind of a regular investment on a regular basis, on par with anything else you might do in this search process. I think, lastly, I think it's taking stock of where your skills are at. I think there's so many cool opportunities, and one of the things we rolled out this summer that was born out of a design challenge that we did last year with students was we curated a number of different skill building opportunities. University struck a deal with Coursera to get students access to thousands of courses. And it's important to take stock of that and fill in the gaps that you might have. Maybe you have C+, but you need to figure out like some basics of Python. Maybe you're a really good writer, but you don't have any understanding of how that applies to business settings. So it's kind of getting exposure to business writing or thinking about writing things in a shorter form than that. Maybe you're a really good researcher, but you don't have any evidence to support that and back it up. What can you do on campus that might be shorter term to gain some more competency, but also evidence to back some of these things up? I think there's so many different options available now to hone skills, build skills that are really short term. I think it's an opportunity to really invest in some spaces that complement your courses and areas, but it's to fill in the gaps that might exist based on what you're interested in going into. But you only understand those things if you do a little research and you talk to people. So they're all kind of connected to each other. But I think U of R students and other university students that are at schools like U of R, I think you're still well positioned to navigate this in a really good way. But you have to kind of figure out what the strategy and the game plan is that's relevant to you, and then take advantage of the resources that are in front of you. And if you have an office or a network of people that are committed, there's a lot of options that still exist and still out there.
That's really great advice. I agree with the whole panicking part very strongly. I remember so many people reaching out to me just panicking, and I think it's important to take a deep breath and sort of realize that it's a situation that's out of control for many people.
Yeah, and it's normal. Like, I'm not saying it's not a freak. I freaked out. Like, when all this happened, it was like I didn't know what was going to happen with my team, with my family, with a lot of things. But I had to take a step back and say, assess the situation, and then figure out a way forward that was going to be, kind of relevant to the situation that I was in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like what you said, I think that in 2 words, like I think one of the things is like upskilling, like consistently keep learning and upskilling yourself, as well as networking, right? Just like getting to know people and getting to know alumni and other people.
Yeah.
Like, those were 2 important elements. I think 2 of the you mentioned, and I'm glad like to Career Center, you guys have the Meliora Collective and other resources too. Like that's been helping students. So I think that's really taking advantage of that.
Yeah, and we've been reaching out to seniors one-on-one that are still looking and trying to connect them more directly to things that are relevant to them. So we've had outreach this summer to the class of 2020 because we know like they were put in a really tough spot. Yeah. Class of 2021 will be in a tough spot too, and so we're going to do the same thing with them and outreach directly, see where they're at, see what they need, and help to connect them specifically to alumni that are able to help them or might be aligned with some of their interests.
Absolutely, Joe. Absolutely. And I think this is just like something that popped in my head as we're talking about it. I think like I'd definitely love to see Career Center like also like helping students like learn how to network as well, not just creating the networking opportunities. And I think it's interesting because I think a lot of students that I've talked to recently have like this hesitance on how to start networking or how to talk to alumni. So that would also be great, just like helping them learn how to network as well, as you guys are creating the bridge for them. So definitely.
Yeah, I think we want to try to help demystify it. I honestly think most students know how to do it and do it really well. They just, when they think about it from a job or people they don't know, I think some people freeze. I hate meeting new people. I mean, it sounds really weird, but I don't like going out like networking events and things like that's not my wheelhouse. Yeah. I'm much better in like smaller groups of people that introduce people to each other. I think it's important when I say take stock, find out who those people are because we all know them, right? Like like Sid is a good example. Both of you guys are good examples of this. You know other people. If someone came to you, you don't know something, you're like, oh, I know 3 other people I can introduce you to.
Yeah.
You guys are good people to have in a network because you're always willing to make those connections. And people play different roles. And I think it's simpler, but we overcomplicate it by overthinking it sometimes. So I agree with you. We do that, and we have to do more of it to help students kind of overcome that anxiety.
Absolutely. But yeah.
So I'm going to start rolling the curtains. While I do that, Sharfuz, it's going to take me 2 seconds of technical struggle.
This
You can go ahead.
session we have ever had so far.
I know, right? It's been really fun though. But Sharfuz, at the start of the session, we started a conversation that I think you should conclude. I think people need to hear, especially Joe needs to hear what happened with your foot.
What happened with my foot?
Yeah.
Very exciting story. So, Joe, what really happened? I actually, like, my ankle got hurt because I was trying to save Sid's life. And this is what happened. So, we were camping on this forest in Colorado. And there's this thing called bear bell. Like this thing, bear bell. So the thing, what a bear bell is, you actually put it in your backpack. So when you're hiking, it rings. So bears can hear that you're there and they will just blend in. What Sid thought is that a bear bell is something that you go find a bear and you put it around its neck. So when it comes after you, you can hear it ringing. So wow. Sid was convinced that what happened. And so he went to find a bear and I went running after him to tell him that's not what it is. That's how I got my ankle hurt. So that's really what happened.
Interesting version of the story. I can't wait to hear the real story.
The other version is that he's trying to tell people that I was staring at a rock and I was walking the other way and I just slipped and fell. But that's not really that can't what happened. I was just he's trying to say I walked on a straight path, basically like a straight plain path, and I was just looking at a rock. And I just felt like a dumbass on a straight path. That's what he's trying to tell people, but that's not true.
Okay,
that's the bear bell.
Agree to disagree, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's what happened. But Joe, thank you. This is amazing.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for spending your evening with us. Literally, Sharfuz looks like he's at a campfire right now. But it's like pitch black behind you. But yeah, thanks so much for being here, Joe. We really, really appreciate your time. Do you have any closing thoughts for the audience?
No, listen, I really appreciate what you two of you are doing, and I feel really fortunate to spend some time with you guys. And knowing both of you as long as I have, I think this has been really fun to catch up and share some ideas and have a good conversation. So thanks for what you're doing and helping a lot of other people. I think this is such a great thing that you guys are doing. Thanks so much, Joe. So for our audience that are still here, make sure to check out Joe on LinkedIn. We have his LinkedIn link here. As well as go follow us at Careers Uncorked. You can find a recorded version of this session as well as our previous speakers. And we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks so much, Joe, for being here again.
So much, Joe.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Yep.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. Make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video and consider subscribing to receive a notification next time we post. Catch you next time.
Wow.
Okay. Like this?
Oh my God.
Oh.
Oh my God.